CEO executive coaching. What is it? How does it work? Is it for you? Well, we're going to talk through that. When we can live life on our terms, on a holistic level, taking into account not just our business lives, but also our health, all of our relationships, from friends, family, partners, the world changes. So when it comes to CEO executive coaching, the question comes down to, what are you looking for? What is a coach? How do you find them? I wish I could tell you that there weren't a lot of coaches out there, or I should say, quote unquote, people who call themselves coaches, but right now it seems like you can't swing a dead cat without hitting somebody who calls himself a coach. So to give you a little bit about me, I started my first of 16 companies when I was 19. I'm 56 now. I've helped people all over the world, been doing coaching and strategy planning with people for over 30 years. I work with CEOs and publicly traded organizations and privately held companies. We do roll-ups, acquisitions, the whole 9 yards. I have helped multiple companies, 4 companies, go from entrepreneurial all the way to billion-dollar market caps. And I don't know how many we've been able to have 10x growth with. So with this, I would like to think that I've got a fair amount of experience under my belt. I've studied entrepreneurial strategy at Harvard. I'm a senior fellow at York University, a couple other things. So there, hopefully that's enough for you to trust me. If you got questions, you can check me out on LinkedIn, ChristopherKluver.com, or Christopher Kluver. But let's talk a little bit about what executive coaching is. And this is something that if you are looking for an executive coach, I'm going to encourage you to review and talk with the coach, but also figure out, what does success look like for you? What is it you think you're looking for? Now, you should be they should be helping you understand it. But in essence, I consider that a good executive coach is going to really be curious and meet the client where they're at. So every organization, individual, leadership team is at one of 4 phases in their evolutionary career. And they go back and forth, and we hit these ceilings over and over and over. Because the skills it takes for us to go from here to here are different than from here to here. So the 4 phases are stabilize, visualize, strategize, and execute. I can talk to you about strategy all day long, but if you're just running around with your hair on fire playing whack-a-mole, well, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. So first we have to be able to stabilize. You have to assess where you are and stabilize so that you start to have a little bit of time, even if it's small bits of arbitrage of time, that empower you then to be able to breathe, to work on yourself. Because once we stabilize, then we can go through and visualize. And oddly, this is one of the biggest challenges that a lot of senior leaders have, is making sure that they're crystal clear on where are they taking the organization? What is the direction? Not just new ideas, not just things, but culturally, evolutionarily. How are we adapting to the new changing environment with technology and markets and all these crazy things that are out there? So coming up with that clear vision of where we want to go. And there's a bunch of different techniques and tools you can do to do that, but it's really, really important. Because for 2 reasons. One, as the CEO, if you aren't crystal clear on where you want to go, you don't have to know how we're getting there and exactly what it looks like when you're there. But if you're not clear in that direction, your company and you personally as an individual are destined to just sort of wave with the tides and whatever reacts in, and you go from one side to the other and you don't really go with intention. But if you can have a crystal clear definition of where you want to go, what does it look like? What would amazing be? If you knew without any shadow of a doubt, man, we can't freaking fail. What does that look like? And you set that goal, you're gonna go much farther, much faster, and you'll achieve a lot more if you look at it from that perspective, because it'll allow you to say no to all the other minutia and all the other quote unquote opportunities that may fall in the way, but maybe they're value, maybe they aren't. So when we start with the stabilization, and there's a bunch of pieces in here, especially looking at the whole person, but we can talk about that more. The second is visualizing. Where is it we want to go? The third piece is stabilizing. And there's a bunch of different systems and tools out there, from stuff called EOS and Scaling Up and Pinnacle, and a bunch of business systems. They're great, and I've been involved in a lot of those. But a coach is different than somebody who's a facilitator helping build those strategies. A good coach, a good advisor, is going to help collaborate and set the table so that when you do those sessions, they're amazing. And then the last component is going to be execution. Stabilize, visualize, strategize, and execute. But it's with ruthless but compassionate accountability. What are those things? How are we doing it? And sometimes that CEO may be sitting at the top and nobody's really holding them accountable. Hopefully their board is. Hopefully their leadership team is. But if they aren't, having one person who's going to kick them in the ass and go, no, I don't agree with that. You said you were going to do it this way. Why aren't you doing it? I like to say that I need to have a willingness. I have to be 100% prepared to get fired for every session I walk into. Because if I'm not willing to do that, if I'm afraid that saying you're getting in your own way, or you didn't do what you say you're going to do, or hold you accountable, then candidly, you should not hire that coach. Because that person is no longer a coach, they're a cheerleader, and they're only going to do what you say, and that is not necessarily what you really need. What you need is somebody who's going to be there to help you with it. So that's meeting people at where they're at and helping them to define how they're going to achieve it. Now, from that perspective, first is somebody that is going to meet you where you're at, but then second, and this is got to be a non-negotiable, when you hire a coach, you have to trust them, and they have to trust you. But you have to trust them, because if you don't, if you're afraid of saying something because you're embarrassed, or because you think they're going to do something, they're going to steal it, or because, for whatever reason, then you shouldn't work with that person. You should hire a coach that you can trust, that you say, God, you know what, right now I have people that I talk to about their relationships with their spouses, or I've known people with addiction issues, or people who were in very dark places. But we were able to talk through those. Now, I'm not a counselor, but I know how to connect and we can get to the right people. But when you have somebody who's compassionate and going to be there, that's important. In the same respect, look for a coach who maybe is got some willingness, and they say we're going to meet for roughly a certain time, maybe I meet with some people twice a week, all the way to once a month. But every one of those people knows that if they need something, if they're between a rock and a hard spot, suddenly a lawsuit comes up, or a bad decision needs to be made with their leadership team, or whatever, and it's on a Sunday night, they are welcome to reach out. I've got their back, because they know I've got them and they trust it. So when you're looking for that person, make sure that you find that person that can help you with it. Now, the next thing is, once we have the trust, part of that trust is making sure that this person's been around the block and has the chops to help you in the way that you need. So one of the biggest challenges, and consistently I see, is from a leadership training perspective. And nobody likes to admit this. But usually CEOs have grown because they work their way up. Maybe they were great leaders. Sometimes people go and take some leadership courses, some leadership training, and there's some good stuff out there, don't get me wrong. But that's one of those areas that we can invest so much more time in. Making sure that we are absolutely critical, or it's critical that we're great at how we have crucial conversations. Teaching and modeling to the CEOs, and then the CEOs can roll down to their teams on how are we modeling holding people accountable, being curious, delegation in healthy ways, positive ways. But what are those tools? And this is where finding out what are the list of things that people need. Rarely, if ever, have I seen people who need a CEO coach, an executive coach, that it can just be a straight formulaic process. Formulaic tools are wonderful, and there's all sorts of tools that can help people with that. But making sure that they find the right fit, and they realize that that person's going to meet them where they're at, and then we can talk about certain points. So the technique I use is I always ask, hey, we got hair on fire, anything big and hairy right now we have to deal with. And usually, let me back up. We start with, tell me some victories. What are some positives? Great. Any you stuck anywhere? Anything hair on fire? We list those out, okay? And we address those right away. But I always have a list of ongoing issues, challenges, opportunities that we can talk about if the time allows for us to hit it, so they know that it's there. But it's making sure, again, to be curious and make sure that coach is being curious to help you there. Now, the last thing I'm going to address, and this is fairly unique, but I think is so important, is the whole idea, and COVID amplified this, but work-life balance, well, let's be honest, is bullshit. It doesn't exist anymore. However, a healthy, intentional work-life integration is. So a lot of times when I'm working with my CEOs, one of the first questions I'm going to ask is, hey, how are you sleeping? And they'll be like, what the hell does that have to do with anything with business? I got 4 hours, I'm fine. Piss off, leave me alone. It's like, okay, but just even that response, the body language, can be very indicative of where that person is. I have one CEO I've worked with for a long time on this, or worked with for a long time, and he used to be that way. But now, he will be the first one, and he tells me at least once a week how he's sleeping, because he feels it's his number one competitive advantage. He realizes that the better he is at being a dad for his young kids, the better he is for being a spouse for his wife, the better he is at taking care of his own health, his physical, his mental, and his spiritual, he actually makes himself stronger, and he makes better decisions. He's able to step back and look at the whole picture, breathe, and really think in a much stronger way that has a much bigger impact. But this can be a challenge to figure out how to handle that. Because let's face it, sometimes you're gonna have the CEO, suck it up, buttercup, you're gonna have to work those 100-hour weeks. That's the way it is. And you're gonna have to get way deep into the weeds. Now, we always wanna be elevating you up so that you can build that amazing team. Because when you have that amazing team, clear vision, oh my God, beautiful things happen. But getting to that point is the challenge. So how do you very strategically and very intentionally build that? How can we very methodically decide where we want to go? However, I want the CEOs, and your CEO executive coach should be leaning on you and helping you to see where you want to be, what amazing can look like, and how important it is for you to think. I worked with somebody who was he was the CEO of a bunch of nonprofits, one family office, over $7 billion. And he came to my office, and he literally just plopped down. He's like, I'm here. I'm like, okay, why? And he's like, well, so-and-so said I should talk to you. So I was like, okay. So we started talking. He left that meeting, and this was on executive coaching for a CEO. He left that meeting with 3 basic action steps. One, first off, was to put his phone in the other room when he slept at night so he got a little bit better sleep. Sounds silly, cornerstone. 2, lived out in the country, drove in, 45 minutes. I asked him to not turn his radio on anymore. Just use that as quiet time for thinking. So he could think about the biggest things he needed to be working on. And then 3, schedule a date night with his wife. Didn't care if it was going to Home Depot for a hot dog. I don't know, whatever it was, simple. And have that on a regular basis so that he could be there quality-wise. I ended up doing a bunch of strategy work with them as well. And about a year later, he pulled me aside at their annual meeting, and he said, you know, Kris, I really want to thank you. In this last year, you actually taught me how to think. You know, and this is a guy who's brilliant. And he's running multi-billion-dollar nonprofits that are changing the world, literally. And he was just now figuring out how to think. And what that did is it empowered him then to start teaching his team and rolling that out to his team to have even a bigger impact. So when it comes for you to be looking for what is that CEO executive coach you're looking for, make sure that it's somebody that you really trust, that's going to meet you where you're at, that's going to call you out and hold you accountable, but also always have your back. And make sure that you become the leader that you can be. So if you want to know more about Life on Your Terms, please go to our website at lifeon-yourterms.com. If you're interested in me as an executive coach, I have room for a couple. I'm pretty selective, I'll be blunt. But you can reach out to me at k@entadv.com. Now, hope you found value in this. If so, please subscribe. Check out some of the other videos on here. But whatever you do, make sure to watch out for yourself as a primary asset. You can have a huge impact that way. Keep smiling.